The north wind tore at the bomber's skin like serrated teeth. The radio hissed a single high-pitched scream, then went dead. Inside the cockpit of the 30-ton Lancaster, the compass needle spun wildly. Flight Lieutenant Arthur Hale watched it whirl one more time and understood that everything designed to keep them alive tonight had just betrayed him. 17,000 feet above the North Sea, Squadron 302 was limping home from its target deep inside Europe. Below them, a city still burned, glowing like a furnace behind the clouds. Around them, the German night was closing like an iron door. Searchlights clawing upward, flak blossoms bursting white, and somewhere in the dark, the distant purr of night fighters that no one wanted to hear. In Hale's headset, the tail gunner rasped through his oxygen mask. 6 o'clock, low, fast. A streak of tracer fire sliced across the night and vanished. Not hit, not yet. On the instrument panel, the altimeter unwound grain by grain. The fuel gauge jittered under turbulence, and the compass needle spun drunkenly. They had flown through a charge of St. Elmo's fire, a ghostly blue spark that had crawled along the nose cone and magnetized every compass on the squadron. Navigation was gone. Hale peered through the frost-streaked windshield. The northern sky wasn't black. It was green. A ribbon of light rose from the horizon, shimmering, rippling, as if someone were pulling a curtain of glass across the stars. The Aurora. Thin, quivering, then swelling into a river of cold fire. 3 hours earlier, a wet runway on England's eastern coast. They weren't dreamers. They were night bombers, men who lived by clocks, compasses, and stars. Arthur Hale, 27, navigator, survivor of 17 missions. Not tall, narrow-jawed, non-smoker. A quiet habit. Before every takeoff, he tapped his pencil case 3 times, as if waking the numbers inside. Beside him sat Tom Fairchild, the pilot, thick wrists, bandaged knuckles. A man who could land a 4-engine monster on a rain-slick strip like threading a needle through silk. Behind them, Owen the tail gunner, Mack in the mid-upper turret, Jenkins the flight engineer, Barker the radio, Goss the bomb aimer. 7 lives braided together. Their target was a railway junction deep inside enemy territory. A black dot on a map, but a vital artery of war. The plan was simple on paper, murderous in practice. In, drop out, follow the G-beam. Trust the compass, keep radio silence. No heroics, just procedure. Then the sky rewrote the plan. They reached the target on schedule. Searchlights bloomed like white trees. Flak detonated into iron flowers. "Bombs away!" Goss yelled. The Lancaster lurched upward as its belly emptied. "Flares, port side!" Mack shouted. Something, a streak of living electricity, snapped across the nose and clung there for one eternal second. The windshield blazed blue as if they'd brushed the soul of the atmosphere, then darkness. The compass died. Not one, all of them. "Arthur heading?" Tom's voice was calm, the calm of men who've learned to fake it. Hale watched the needle spin, waited, hoped. It didn't stop. He keyed the intercom. Compass failure. 3 words, sharp as a knife. Behind them, the city still burned. Ahead lay the black width of the North Sea. 200 miles of night where a single degree's error could feed the squadron straight into the waiting web of German interceptors. No compass, no bearings, no way home. Hale unfolded the sweat-stained chart and switched to dead reckoning. Airspeed, wind, time, drift. But tonight the wind was a wounded animal, changing its course with every breath. The numbers began to drift too. "Arthur," Tom said again, not finishing the rest, "we need a decision." Hale looked up and saw it. North, not on the compass, in the sky. A curtain of Aurora brightened off the left wingtip. At first a faint edge, then a wide arc waving across the horizon like a giant signal flag. He remembered the manuals. The Aurora doesn't appear at random. It traces the magnetic belt, usually due north, sometimes leaning east. Tonight, that ribbon of light stretched northeast, the exact bearing of the escape route he'd plotted that afternoon. On paper, his pencil line ran seaward at 65 degrees. Above him, the Aurora tilted at the same angle. The compass lied. The sky didn't. Regulations said, wait for instruments to stabilize, trust the G-beam, do not improvise. This was not the time for inspiration. Instinct said, turn toward the darkest patch of sky and run. Logic said, if the Germans had built their fighter screen along the standard withdrawal lane, then every minute they followed it was a minute closer to death. Hale exhaled and spoke into the intercom, his voice steady but unreal. Tom, forget the compass, follow the Aurora. A silence, the kind that swallows everything. Then Tom chuckled once. The sound of a man fully aware he was about to disobey the manual. Roger. Following the Green River. He banked left. Hale watched the instruments swing and leveled them. 12 degrees port, hold. He counted in his head like counting heartbeats. Behind him, the engineer balanced the fuel tanks. The gunners muttered curses, the radio hissed snow, and the ribbon of light ahead slid into perfect alignment with the bomber's nose. Exactly where Hale wanted it, hovering just off-center like a road drawn for ghosts. All aircraft, maintain spacing, Hale ordered. If you lose signal, lock your eyes on the Aurora. Repeat, lock on the Aurora. Behind them, 5 remaining Lancasters tipped their wings one by one. Their navigation lights blinked once, an unspoken nod. They had abandoned the standard route. They were flying blind, guided only by a river of frozen light. No charts approved, no instruments agreeing, only the heavens. If they were wrong, they'd fly straight into the fighter ambush waiting northwest, the invisible net stretched by radar and prediction. If they were right, they'd vanish from the grid entirely, because no one expected a bomber squadron to throw away its compass and chase the northern lights. Tom drew a long breath. Hold the line. Hale tapped his pencil case 3 times. The fate of the squadron now hung on a ribbon of light in the sky. For the first 5 minutes, no one spoke. The only sound was the steady thunder of 4 Merlin engines and the thin whistle of air sliding past the canopy seals. Outside, the world was nothing but black and green. Black where the earth hid, green where the heavens bled. The Aurora rippled like a living thing flowing eastward across the sky. And Hale realized they were no longer flying through night but under a sea made of light. Behind them, 6 silhouettes followed. Silent, obedient, trusting the one man who had told them to abandon every rule they'd ever learned. Steady, speed 185, altitude 17,000, Hale whispered. Copy, Tom said. Somewhere below, flak bursts still blossomed, but the thunder was distant now. Each detonation flashed dimly through the clouds like lightning buried inside smoke. Then the tail gunner broke the calm. Contact. 6 o'clock high. Closing fast. Hale felt the hairs on his arms rise. Night fighters, Messerschmitts or Junkers, hunters guided by radar and blood instinct. And if they were here, it meant one thing. The Germans had already anticipated the standard retreat corridor. They were waiting along the invisible highway that the British had flown 100 times before, except 302 wasn't on that highway anymore. Hold course, Hale said. Do not break formation. He leaned toward the window. The Aurora brightened for a heartbeat, a vertical spear of emerald flame that carved through the clouds like a signal from the gods. When it faded, Hale saw the shadows, 3 dark specks above sliding across the stars. Fighters confirmed, he said quietly. They're sweeping the standard lane. They don't see us. Tom gave a single nod. No cheers, no celebration, just breath. Minutes became miles. The Aurora thickened into bands and pillars, trembling as though the sky itself were breathing. To Hale, it looked almost alive, like a river bending east, pulling them away from everything human. Fuel 72%, oxygen stable. They'd have to descend soon. Tom broke the silence. "We can't hold this altitude all the way home." "I know," Hale said. "Stay above 12 until we clear the coast. We'll ride the light." Barker, the radio operator, murmured, "I can try to raise command." "No!" Hale cut him off. "Radio silence. Any signal and the Germans will have us painted in 10 seconds. Owen laughed bitterly in the intercom. "So we follow a ghost sky and pray the ghost knows geography." No one answered. The Aurora flared again, a sheet of pale green fire stretching horizon to horizon. For a moment it illuminated the ocean far below, a mirror of broken silver. And in that light Hale saw something else, a bank of cloud forming dead ahead, thick and rising. "Cloud wall ahead. If we go in, we'll lose the lights," Tom warned. "Then we'll navigate by their reflection," Hale replied. He pointed down. "See that faint glow on the water? That's our course line. Stay with it." They plunged into the fog, instant blindness. Inside the cockpit, the world vanished. No stars, no horizon, no sense of up or down. The aircraft groaned as turbulence clawed at its wings. "Artificial horizons drifting," Jenkins yelled. "Hold manual," Tom barked. In the white chaos, Hale's world shrank to numbers, counting seconds, calculating wind drift from memory. 10 seconds east, 3 degrees port, 30 seconds straight. He whispered to himself, "The light's still there, it's got to be." Then the fog tore open. They burst from the cloud like swimmers breaking the surface of an ocean, and there it was again. The river of light, brighter than before. Every bomber behind them followed through the same hole, engines howling, silvered by the glow. It felt for the briefest instant like resurrection. But the night wasn't done. From the rear turret came the dreaded call. "Fighter! Starboard rear, closing!" Tom snapped the Lancaster into a shallow dive. Tracer lines whipped past the tail, orange sparks slicing the dark. "Keep it gentle," Hale shouted. "If you break from the Aurora, we lose our heading." Owen opened fire, 6 streams of tracers disappearing into the black. For 3 seconds, the sky became a furnace, then nothing. "Did we get him?" Tom asked. Owen's voice came back flat. "He's gone. Either broke off or burned." They didn't look back. Behind them, the Aurora began to fade, the green dissolving into faint silver curtains. Dawn was coming somewhere beyond the clouds. "Fuel check," Hale said. 40%, Jenkins replied. "Enough for one try." One try. One chance to find home on a planet that had turned its lights off. Hale peered through the canopy, searching. Then, a glint, a thin amber line at the world's edge, the first light of morning creeping over the Atlantic. He flipped through his notes. Dawn from this latitude, this date, 05:48 hours, due west by northwest. He looked at the clock, 05:47. He smiled, a small, tired smile. "Tom, hold heading. We're on the right side of the world." Below them, faint patches of silver-marked waves, the North Sea. They were out. When they finally broke radio silence, the control tower's voice sounded half in disbelief, half in awe. "Lancaster 302, we lost you for 2 hours. How the hell did you navigate back?" Hale glanced once more at the pale shimmer still flickering behind them on the horizon. "We followed the lights," he said simply. And in that sentence lay all that mattered. They touched down on the wet English runway just as the sun cleared the trees. Engines coughed, cooled, died. Crewmen climbed out slowly, stretching like men waking from a dream. The ground crews surrounded them, shouting questions, but no one answered right away. Tom looked at Hale, eyes rimmed red from fatigue. "You know they'll court-martial us for ignoring procedure," he said. Hale tapped his pencil case 3 times on the wing. "Maybe," he said, "but we're here to attend it." When the after-action report reached Group Command 2 days later, it was filed under the usual code: navigation anomaly, magnetic interference. That phrase meant nothing. It did not mention the Aurora. It did not mention the 7 aircraft that survived because one navigator ignored the manual. The official story was simple. Squadron 302 returned safely due to evasive maneuvers and favorable weather. But in the mess hall, in whispers passed over tin mugs of cold tea, the men told it differently. They said a green river had opened in the sky, and that Arthur Hale had read it like a map written for one night only. Some called it luck. Some called it madness. To the 21 airmen who lived, it was a miracle written in physics. Months later, a report from the Royal Observatory confirmed what Hale had instinctively understood. The magnetic storm that night had been one of the strongest of the decade, a solar flare that distorted the Earth's magnetic field over northern Europe. Compasses went wild from Norway to the Shetlands. But the Aurora, glowing where those lines of magnetism bent, still traced the planet's true magnetic north. In other words, while the instruments went blind, the sky itself became a compass. Only someone willing to look up instead of down could have seen it. No court-martial came. Instead, a quiet commendation arrived, unsigned, unofficial. It read only, "Exceptional navigation under adverse conditions. Actions contributed to total survival of Squadron." Hale never mentioned the Aurora again in any briefing. He stayed in service another year, flew 12 more missions, and returned home with the same pencil case, still dented from years of tapping 3 times before every flight. He died in 1989, a retired surveyor living by the sea. In his attic, they found his flight log. Between pages worn thin by grease and sweat, there was a single line written in pencil, smaller than the rest. March 14, 1943, magnetic storm, compass useless, followed Aurora, home. Nothing more. In aviation schools today, navigators still study the phenomenon known as the Hale deviation. Not as a superstition, but as a lesson. It teaches that no system is perfect, that technology can fail, and that human instinct, sharpened by discipline, can bridge the impossible. In the age of satellites and GPS, that story feels like myth. Yet every pilot who flies beneath the northern lights still knows it. When the green glow flickers across the horizon, they remember a night when a compass lied, and the sky told the truth. War stories often end in explosions, medals, or death. This one ends in silence, a man staring at a color in the sky and choosing to believe it. What saved Squadron 302 wasn't luck or divine intervention. It was something simpler, more fragile, the courage to trust wonder in a world designed to extinguish it. Because sometimes survival doesn't come from obeying orders. It comes from looking up and realizing the universe might still be giving directions, even when every instrument says otherwise. "The compass pointed the wrong way," Hale once told a friend. "So I followed the light instead. And that, history would later agree, was the right direction all along."